This is KTVO's Good Morning Heartland.
And welcome back. As we hear about a possible major outbreak of the Ebola virus in Africa, people across the heartland have been asking if they're at risk. Could the deadly virus reach us here in the United States? Well, Dr. Justin Puckett from Complete Family Medicine is here this morning to break it down for us. How are you doing today?
Doing good, thank you.
So, I've heard about this before, and I know recently, within the last couple of weeks, I've heard about this, but I don't really know much about it. So can you just tell us what the Ebola virus is all about?
Yeah, the Ebola virus is a small virus, kind of like the flu or hepatitis, that has had some endemic outbreaks in Africa, mostly West Africa. I remember there were lots of shows in the 90s that every TV show had an episode about the Ebola virus and how it was going to wipe out the earth. And so it's kind of, a lot of folks have been asking me about that in the office because it's kind of hit the news again that there's been this outbreak. In Guinea, which is the place where the outbreak has occurred, since April there's been April 1st, there's been 121 cases diagnosed and 83 deaths.
Wow. So tell us more about this deadly virus.
Yeah, so the way that this virus works is it infects the body just like any other virus. It comes from body fluids, and so blood and sweat, and it can even be transferred via things like a towel. So we call that fomite transmission. And so whenever the virus attacks you, it lives in your body for 3 weeks before you get sick. Now, the good news is during that 3-week period of time, you're not actually infectious and you can't make someone else sick. But once it does start to activate, it then attacks the body, causing normal symptoms of like what we'd see with a flu, body aches, fever, and then it goes on to cause blood vessels to rupture. And so that's why we call it that Ebola hemorrhagic fever, where people have even been known to bleed out of their ears and eyes. But mostly it kills people through liver and kidney failure. There's actually 5 identified types of the Ebola virus, of which 4 are deadly. There's one type that doesn't seem to kill people, but the other 4 do. And the one that's outbreak right now in Guinea is the Ebola Zaire, which is the most deadly of all. And in Africa, it kills about 9 out of 10 people.
Wow. So let's talk about some of the symptoms that occurs with this virus.
Yeah, so you get the fever, you get the body aches, and just total malaise, feeling real bad, weak. And sometimes it's identified as being some other sort of a viral illness before it's recognized as the Ebola virus. And so, and the sad part about West Africa is there's not much medical care there. And so those folks get sick very quickly, become dehydrated, and then as they bleed and there's no blood products available, many of them perish.
And how can you stop the spread of this?
At this point, outside of just good hygiene, gowns, gloves for healthcare workers, eye protection, recognizing it for what it is, and trying to treat it, there really isn't any medication. We use IV fluids. They also use blood products and then things to control blood pressure, and some people need to be put on a ventilator, and again, those just aren't available in Africa. Yeah. There is no vaccine, although scientists are working on it. Okay. So hopefully we'll have a vaccine soon.
Okay, now I know that you had mentioned during commercial break that some of your own patients have asked about it because they're worried. Is there any way that we can see a case here in the U.S.?
Well, I'm sure it's possible that if somebody in Guinea was in that 3-week period and boarded a plane and came to the U.S., that they could bring it with them. But that's never happened. I don't think it's going to happen. The outbreaks of the Ebola virus tend to be in areas that are quite impoverished, and those folks just don't have the resources to travel to the U.S., generally speaking. Probably our biggest risk would be actually healthcare workers that are doing medical missions trips and such over there. Right. But luckily, most of them are taking good protective equipment with them so that they've got gloves and gowns and that sort of thing. The only the only infection of Ebola that's ever been recorded on U.S. soil actually came out of a place outside of Washington, D.C. from some monkeys, because the transmission, the virus tends to live in monkeys and bats in Africa, and then it transmits to humans at different intervals. And so we have a monkey research center outside of Washington, D.C., and there was a group of workers there, but luckily they were all infected with that one type of Ebola virus that doesn't cause you to get symptoms. And so they developed antibodies to it, and we know that they had it, but none of them got sick. So I think that we're safe right now, and we just need to keep an eye on this, and it's certainly something that that we need to be aware of. I think more than actually being fearful of anybody in the heartland getting Ebola virus is it just brings some light to what third world medical conditions can be. And sometimes we forget some of the simple blessings that we have, such as IV fluids and we can, blood supplies are generally wide available. And so, I would just encourage anyone, if they have an opportunity to support some sort of a third world medical missions or another medical station, that they would do that, because what could cost us $10 could stop an outbreak.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Dr. Puckett. What we'll do is we'll post everything on our website at heartlandconnection.com, and we'll be right back.